All right, so I'm making this video to try and save people a lot of grief if you happen to, like me, poorly decide to buy the Tandy Pro, that's an oxymoron, manual strap cutter. So this is for cutting leather. I hate using those little wood strap cutters because I have a disability and I can't really use it one-handed, so I figured this would be a good alternative. And rather than waiting for something on Temu or Alibaba, and hoping that would work, I figured, hey, this would be a better machine right out of the box. Not like Weaver level quality, but at least I could use it and it'd be a better product. Well, I was definitely wrong on that. So if you know what these look like, well, you can see the pile of parts here. I have this machine partially disassembled due to all of the issues that I've been running into. If you do buy one, the manual is pretty much worthless. The first sentence says it's ready to go out of the box. That's a complete lie. You don't even have the handle on. You don't have half the stuff attached to it. And it is definitely not calibrated. So the reason I have it broken down, so this is a table. When you buy one, this table will be on there. I had to take mine off, and I'll kind of give you the rundown why. So the way these work, you take this plate off here, and on this black shaft, you have spacers, okay? And you have knives. The knives, of course, are what does the cutting. These are the knives. They slide on there, and then you space them based on whatever width leather you want to cut using these little shims, okay? The little shims are 1/8 of an inch, and the bigger ones are 1/4 of an inch. They're not exact, so like if you're trying to go for an inch, it's gonna be 1 1/16, but for leather purposes, that's obviously gonna work just fine. And the way it works, you see this table goes up and down, okay? And obviously I'm missing this part, which again, I'll explain in a second. You raise the table so that the knives contact this plastic roller, because if they don't contact the plastic roller, obviously you're not going to cut through the leather. Well, what I first noticed was my knives were touching here, they were not touching here. And if you looked across, let's see if I can slide the table on. It's kind of a pain in the rear to take back off and on. But when I looked across my table, when I first got it from the factory, or from Tandy, that back corner on this left side was way low. Like you could see the whole thing was twisted. And obviously if the knives are not touching that white little plastic roller, it's not gonna cut through the leather. So I started screwing around with it here. I basically keep disassembling the machine to try and get this silly thing calibrated. And I kind of feel like I've got it closer. One of the issues I run into, let's see if I can come back over here and do this. Take this back off. It's got 3 screws that hold this on. There's one here, one there, and then one over here. There's a hole for one there, but they didn't put any screws. They didn't grind a hole in there, and obviously it'd be almost impossible to get in there. But what I found was the way this table works, and I'm sorry for my poor camera skills here, I'm holding my phone with my prosthesis. This pivots up and down on these tie rods back there, okay? These are called tie rods, very common piece of equipment you have. They're typically used on like steering cars, lawnmowers, all sorts of stuff. That's all that they use on here, and it's not a big deal that these are a little canted off center. They're designed to do that. But in order to get the black roller, where your knives go, parallel to the white roller, you have to adjust these up and down. Now, you don't have a wrench for that. In fact, I don't know if a wrench, you could kind of do it with a wrench. These are 17 millimeter. In order to get at the bottom here, I had to use a deep well socket. And if you look here, you can see that one is definitely up more than that one. And that's the only way I could get them perfectly parallel. All right, so in order to do that, you're gonna need some sort of a shim or something. Now I have a woodworking business, so I have all these fancy little shims here, but even a block of wood or something that's the same would work. It needs to be the same distance here as over here. If it's not, you need to adjust those tie rods in the back. Again, those things back there. Don't worry about these things up here. All these do is adjust that up and hold it up when you have your knives touching there and everything is set up, okay? okay? And when you do that, this cover plate comes off. There's 3 screws that are supposed to be in here. I only have 2 in there. That plate helps hold, again, that cutting shaft where it needs to be perpendicular to this. If you don't have that on and you're trying to shim that and adjust that, this can flex up and down, or maybe be where it doesn't, shouldn't be. And then you bolt that on and now it's out of whack again. So when you do screw with this, if yours is way off like mine was, if you notice that a knife is touching here, not touching there, or vice versa, it's touching here and not touching there, because these things are clearly not, again, I'm sorry, calibrated from the factory, from Tandy, you'll have to go through this whole procedure. The other thing I noticed, this thing here, this bar attaches to these side shafts with only 1 screw. This one's actually loose. This one was way off. It was totally out of alignment. I loosened it, only to find this one's loose here. Well, there's no way to get at the screw head in there. I would have to disassemble that whole shaft, pull the gear off. Actually, I wouldn't have to pull the gear off, but I'd have to pull my tie rods back off, spacers off, just to tighten that. For now, I'm gonna deal with that. It's a pain, but it is what it is. So I can see if I can reassemble this here, as long as I'm already here. Instead of making 2 videos, it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of a pain to get that back on. And I'm doing all this one-handed. Just got Phillips screws. Number 2 Phillips works just fine. Obviously don't cross thread them. Get them all started, but don't tighten them until they're all started. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of on the fence, like, should I buy the Tandy? Should I, I really don't want to wait. I have very limited free time. In the summer months, I work 7 days a week for about 6 months a year due to the nature of my work. So the only time of year I can really do leather and hobbies is in the winter. Well, I really didn't want to wait until March. By the way, I'm taking this back off right now because, and you do get the edge wrench for this, but for a couple reasons. One, I need to get back at that screw to screw this table back down, but 2, so there's the other screw. But you can't put any knives or any of the spacers on until you, sorry, brain fart, until you take that plate off. So let's see, where's my other screw? Again, this is an impromptu video. I did not plan on doing this. I'm holding a camera and trying to do this just kind of stinks. But I figure there's only 1 video on YouTube as of this date where anybody talks about it, and it's just kind of a general overview. The guy doesn't really say anything. So, all right, so table screwed back down, my tie rod's in the back. I know that this roller and the table are now perfectly parallel to this once I put that plate back on, okay? If yours is not, if you glance in there and it's noticeably tapered, or it's not the same, or you start putting knives on there and they're touching here and not touching there, or vice versa, unfortunately, you're gonna have to go through this whole procedure in order to do that, okay? So now I've got this, now I'm trying to remember how these gotta go. Do they go there? I think they go there. We'll cover that in a minute. I guess I'll remember once we start getting in there. To set this up, you're gonna have to, I would start with some spacers. I mean, I guess you could run all the way up to the edge here, but due to their sort of really hokey edge guide, just like a table saw, your edge guide here that you start with should be perfectly parallel to your knives, right? Like if it's like, again, I'm a woodworker, so your fence needs to be perfectly parallel to your knives. Well, this has 1 screw. There's no way of knowing that. So what I'm gonna end up doing, I'm gonna put a square on this and then mark a perfectly perpendicular line here so I know where to put that. So again, that's something you're gonna have to do. But I just wanna show you when you go to set this up, and you will need to have this table adjusted down. You got 2 little adjustment screws under there. I can't get low enough, but just adjust those down, screw them down with your fingers so that you have enough room to slide your stuff on here. Okay, so now let's say I want 1 inch. Okay, so you can use a combination of big ones, little ones. Okay, so there's, again, 1/4 inch for the big one. So there's a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 5/8 of an inch. Let's put another small one on. That gets us up to 3/4 of an inch. Do another big one. Okay, there's my inch. Now I can go ahead and put another knife in. Okay, it is kind of tedious to sit and do this, but of course you don't have to do it the whole time. So I'm not gonna do it right now, but let's say you go ahead, fill this whole thing up with your knives, your spacers, you got everything figured out. You're gonna have to, the spacers will come all the way up to this threaded end of the shaft. Now, here's something they don't tell you in the manual. This nut is left-hand thread. If you try righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, you're gonna be here for a very long time, okay? It's left-hand thread, all right? Again, if you start cranking on that, thinking it's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, I went to loosen it and I realized, I was like, hey, this thing's not loosening. I wonder if it's left-hand thread. Sure enough, it was, okay? So you'll put that on, you'll take your plate, okay? This will go back on, you got your 3 screws. Once you get all that back together, you're gonna adjust your table up here. See how it touches the plastic? You got these little screws under here. You're gonna adjust that up and it's gonna hold that up, okay? It needs to be, the knives need to be in direct contact with with that roller. If it's not, if you have any little bit of room there, it's not gonna cut through, okay? Ask me how I know. All right, so I just realized here too, I don't have these. I'm trying to remember exactly how these go. Okay, so I don't have these on here, right? So these little things here on the back, again, the manual's pretty atrocious. I know for a fact I don't have those in the right spot. They need to be under, I think I can kind of show you here. They need to be under like this. Okay, if you have these on top, like I accidentally did in the back here, because again, I couldn't remember, I was just making an impromptu video. I didn't feel like, I had the machine apart, so I was like, I'm gonna show you now. Now, I fortunately didn't tighten these down, so I can slide these out of the way enough, hopefully without cutting my hand off. There we go, okay. They need to be kind of like under, like that. The reason being, when you cut leather, when it finally does cut all the way through, it's going to try and stick inside the knives here and curl back around. And that's what I figured out real quick. Again, the manual's like atrocious on this thing. It doesn't really help you very much. It'll curl back around, so you need to have those, I don't know what they call, hold down fingers, whatever the hell you want to call them. They will keep the leather so that it feeds back out that way. All right, so if you accidentally do what I just did here, and you like that one's on top, and you have the whole shaft on there, you'll have to take everything back out, or at least loosen it enough that you have a gap so you can slide those back down so they're underneath like that, and then you'll tighten this nut back up once you got everything set where you want it, okay? There's obviously a guard, a shield that goes on there. It's plastic. You can throw that on there. Again, I have it off because I'm working on it. Here's the other thing. I think this is probably about the final thing. I'm kind of just blowing through this randomly. You get a handle here, right? Handle's great, except the nut they gave you to hold it on. I can do this. So there's the handle. There's the nut. So what's wrong with that picture? That nut is way too small for the hole and for that to go on there. So what you're gonna have to do, maybe it's supposed to come with one, I have no idea. go get a little 1/4 inch washer. I think that's 1/4 inch, maybe 5/16. I have tons of hardware. I work on stuff, fabricate stuff. Go get a washer. Okay, you're gonna have to chuck a washer in there. Okay, put that on there. The handle just goes on here. Square, square, doesn't really matter where you put it on there. Again, I'm sorry, I'm trying to do all this one-handed while looking through the phone. It kind of stinks. All right, you got that on there. Take your washer. Again, you're gonna need a washer. That nut is not big enough. I don't know what they were thinking. And this is obviously normal thread. They do give you a little chintzy wrench to put this on. And that handle does come in handy. Where's the little chintzy wrench? I got it laying here somewhere. It's like a little cap socket type looking thing. Again, it's probably under the machine somewhere. Anyway, you'll use your little wrench socket thing to put that on there and tighten that up. But again, you need to add a washer. Okay, maybe it's supposed to come with one and I just didn't get one. I have no idea, but you're supposed to have a washer. If you just try ramming it on there with that nut, there's a good chance it's gonna kind of maybe come loose or break something. It's like incomplete. So long story short, I hope this video was totally rambling, but I hope this video helped somebody at least. Look, would I consider this a pro machine? Not by any stretch. Like, it's kind of laughable it says Tandy Pro. If it said like Timo Pro, okay, fine, and I had only paid 300 bucks for it, totally understandable. The fact that this is over $800 at Tandy and you gotta take it apart, it's not put together right, its screws are loose, it's out of calibration, it's missing hardware. You can buy ones on, I think, Alibaba for $400 or $500 that literally have a 110 volt electric motor on them for half the price. Considering the fact that I had to take this thing apart and figure it out before I can even use it is a joke. It's definitely not worth $800. Does it work? Absolutely. Like, once you go through all these steps and you kind of screw around, yes, you can make it work. If you're not mechanically inclined, don't buy this. Okay, you're gonna need some of your own tools. I need sockets. I need very fancy little spacers. You could probably get away with, you know, some random hardware you've got laying around that happens to be the right size to put in there, but you shouldn't have to do that. For $800 and some plus tax, you shouldn't have to do any of this stuff, okay? If I had to do this again, I definitely wouldn't buy this one. I'm not saying I'm gonna run out and spend $2,000 on a Weaver machine. I would probably just buy the actual Chinese machine, because that's all this is. This is just a cheap Chinese machine that they slap this label on. That's all they're doing. I would just search around online, buy it from overseas, have it shipped over here, pay $300-400. Like, if I'd pay $300-400, totally understandable that I'd have to do this. The fact that I had to pay $800, no, that doesn't sit well with me. So again, I hope this video helped somebody. You know, if you buy one of these or you're thinking about buying one of these, hopefully this video was informative. If you got any questions, drop them in the comments and I'll try and answer.